Hello and welcome to another edition of How Do They Do It. In this video, what we are going to learn is how spammers bypass this ReCaptcha challenge and bombard you with a lot of spam. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. So let's get started with this video. Now, first of all, ReCaptcha is one of the strongest CAPTCHA. Probably human CAPTCHA is another one which is on the same level of difficulty. But still, so these are one of the most difficult CAPTCHAs to be solved by programming itself. So what is the solution? So the solution to this problem is to get help of some companies. Now there are many companies. So the one that I tried is 2captcha. So how these companies work is basically they have real people who solve these captchas, and these are like very cheap actually. So if you look at their pricing, they charge $0.72 or 72 cents for 1000 normal captchas, and if you want to solve ReCaptcha, they are going to charge you $3 for 1000 ReCaptchas. And the solving speed, if it is normal captcha, it is going to take 11 seconds average. For ReCaptcha, it is going to take 46 seconds. Alright, so what I did is I signed up for their service. I paid the initial money to them and I got one API key. Now on the API page, you will see the complete documentation. So there is a lot of documentation that you can go through. So if you want to have a real fine-tuned control, you can go through their API. Now, they have very conveniently published a wrapper that can take care of solving the captchas very easily. So you will see that there is a section for ReCaptcha version 3, version 2. There is this edge captcha, which is human captcha, and there are a lot of other captchas. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a use of this package. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to work with this page. All right. This is a page that I created only for this purpose. All right. So if you want to click submit, it will not submit. Okay. You have to pass this challenge. I am not a robot. And then if you click submit, you will be shown this super secret password. All right. So what we are going to do is we are going to work with this page. We are going to take help of this particular service. So let's open this new incognito window. All right. Press F12, paste in this URL. All right. And before I press enter, I want to make sure that preserve log and disable cache is checked. Press enter. And there we go. So this is the get request. So by default, whenever you load the page, the first request is always get, which sends standard browser headers. So there is something in the response headers. This is a cookie. And here you can see that this is a CSRF token. Now, whenever you see any CSRF token, you need to know that you have to read this dynamically. CSRF token is usually part of the form also, right? So what I'm going to do is view page source. So let's search for CSRF. There we go. So CSRF middleware token. Now we have two things to take care of: CSRF token and CSRF middleware token. So there are two tokens that we need to take care of, right? Now I'm going to clear everything for just a moment and check this, and let's see what is happening. Now this is going to send two requests. So this one, if you look at the headers, this is going to Google URLs. It's a post request, right? And the second one, this one is also going to Google URLs. All right. Let me clear this once again and let's click on submit. So this is the request that we need to mimic, right? So we want to send this post request, and this is, by the way, to the same URL, but even if it is to different URL, doesn't really matter. All right, let's look at the request headers. Now in the request header, notice this thing. The CSRF token is being sent in the cookie. So it was received in the cookie and it is sent in the cookie. So what we need to make sure is that we carry the cookie from the first request and send it to the next request. So this is the first thing. There is content type is application/xww form URL encoded. So this is required because we are sending some payload. All right. And here we can see that CSRF middleware token is here. G ReCaptcha response. So this is a long token which was received earlier when we got the success message. So now what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are getting this correctly. So now I'm going to open Visual Studio Code and let's create one new file. Let's create a new file, and I'm just calling it config.py, and here I'm going to create one variable, and this is where I'm going to paste in the actual API key that I got from the site. So pausing the video for now. So now I saved that config.py with the API key. A note here, this is not the best practice. You should be creating environment variable for that, okay? But anyway, let's go with this. And now I'm going to create one new file. Let's call this demo.py. And now if I want to check that API key, if I want to access that API key, this is a config file, so I have this available here. So far, very straightforward. Everything looks okay. Now let's go to the documentation, and the first thing that we need to do is we need to install this, okay? So pip3 install. Now I'm on my terminal, and I'm going to simply copy paste this, and it will take care of installation. Now in this video, I'm going to use a request module. So this is anyway dependent on request, so it has already installed request. But I'm also going to use a beautiful soup along with LXML. So let me install those as well. So pip install beautiful soup 4 and LXML, because I'm just going to use LXML for the parser. If you have any other preference, doesn't matter at all. Now let's copy these two lines. So I'm going to copy these two lines, and this is where I have to provide the API key. So this is my API key. Now I have this solver ready. But remember that before I can solve this CAPTCHA, I first need to send a GET request and get that cookie, the first cookie. So this is my URL. So let me write a quick function. So let's call this get cookie, and this will take one URL, and this is going to return the cookie. Now let's paste in this URL. So this is the URL. So now let's implement this function. So what we have to do is, first of all, let's create a response object, and that response object is going to be, let's import request. So this is going to be request.get this particular URL. We will have the response, okay? And I'm not going to do any error handling for now. What we are going to still do is, let's get that CSRF token. Now for that, I'll have to create one beautiful soup object. So this is my beautiful soup object. It needs two things. Number one, it's going to need the response.text, okay? Number two, it is going to need the parser. So I'm going to use LXML parser, mostly because of it is of habit, and this is the fastest one, okay? Anyway, so let's look at the markup, and where is that CSRF token? CS. So this is just input type hidden with this particular name. So what we can do is we can make use of CSS selectors. So let me give this a name. Side note, by the way, if you are working with beautiful soup, do not use the find methods, use the select methods. The reason is that when you learn CSS selector, you can apply those selectors, your learnings, to the next tool that you are going to learn. But if you just use the find method, that knowledge is not portable. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one CSS selector. So if you are not comfortable with CSS selector, I'm going to leave a link to the video where I have covered in detail how to create CSS selector. But this one is simply looking for any element which contains this name attribute, okay, and this particular value. So this will get me the CSRF element instance. There we go. Now I actually want to get that CSRF token, so that will be inside this attribute. This attribute is a value. So this is the value attribute, and there I got this CSRF token. Let me do one more thing. Let's get the cookies as well. So there we go. So these are my cookies. And from this function, I'm going to return both the things in one go. So I'm going to return CSRF and I'm going to return cookies. So both the things. So this basically should be get CSRF and cookies. So this is the first function. You give the URL and you will get the CSRF token and the cookies. So this is one logical step. This is done, right? So whenever we are running the code, so we should be running the code like this. If name equals, underscore underscore main, then call the main function. And in the main function, what we are going to do is we are going to call this get CSRF token and cookie, and this is going to return the CSRF and cookie. Now let's create a function to solve the CAPTCHA. So let's call this solve function, and this will also take the URL. Now what are the things that you need to know before you can solve this CAPTCHA? So of course you need your API key, and you need to create this solver instance, which we have already done. The next thing that we need to do is we need to examine this markup of this I'm not a robot and look for, let me show you what you have to look for. So this ReCaptcha will be in iframe, and just outside this ReCaptcha there will be this data site key. So let me make it even bigger. All right, so this is the particular element that you want, data site key. So you are actually looking for this value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. This is my site key. Now this site key has to be sent to this solver. So this solver will take URL and site key. Now I'm going to refer the documentation. Here we have the example of ReCaptcha version 2. So I'm going to copy paste this and let me show you how it works. So that's it. So first of all, we are going to use the instance of solver and then call the ReCaptcha method. Okay. We need to send the site key. So we just stored the site key just like that. Okay. Now site keys usually they start with CL, may not be a pattern. Anyway, so we got the site key. Now we need to send the URL of the page. So this is the URL, right? And right now we do not have any other parameter. So that's it. So once this function executes, it's going to return a result, and that result is going to be in JSON format, right? But this may create some errors. So let's surround this in a try except. So that's what happens when you work with multiple languages. Anyway, so if there is an error, then what we are going to do is we are going to print a message that failed to solve CAPTCHA. And if you failed to solve the CAPTCHA, then you should just exit the program. There is nothing else to do, right? Now, if the result is successful, in that case, what we can do is we can return this result. And this result is actually going to be a JSON object. So let's do something simple. Let's print this. All right. This is going to be solve, this URL and the site key. I'm simply going to print the result. And let me show how it is working so far. So if you look at the directory structure, we have this demo.py, so Python 3, demo.py. Now, of course, it is going to take a lot of time, right? We saw on the dashboard that is it averages at around 40 seconds. But right now we can see that we have this JSON object returned where this is the ID and this is the code. So what we are interested in is this particular code. So let's modify this code a little bit. And in the solve method, we are going to return this code. And so finally, once the solve method executes, we will have this complete token. All right. Now let's write one more method. Now this method is going to take care of the post. Okay. Now post the page. This is going to take URL, and it actually needs a lot of things. It needs the CSRF token. It needs the cookie. It needs the result, right? So these are all the things which is required for posting the page. Anyway, we have all these things. So let's begin. See, first of all, what we are going to do is we are going to call request.post, and we are going to post to the same URL, right? And after the post, what we are going to do is we are going to send the payload. Okay, so the payload has to be in this format. So this is going to be key equals value. Let's come back to the site. Now what I'm going to do is, so far we have achieved this I'm not a robot. So let's click on submit, and this is the submit, and let's look at the payload, and let's look at the source. So this is the format of your form data which is being sent. Okay, so here we can see that there is CSRF middleware token. So let's put it here. Okay, and this will contain the CSRF token value. So let me put that here, and then the second value which is being sent is this G ReCaptcha response. Okay, and this is where we have to pass in that value which we got after solving it, and these have to be separated with ampersand because these will be sent like that. Okay, now we have the payload. Now let's take the headers as well, because we will be needing the headers, right? So let's create one local variable headers, and this header is going to be a dictionary. So if you don't know what headers you need to send, you can typically send all the headers. But I know from the experience that there are special headers which are important. Number one, this content type. This is going to be important. Cookie, we don't have to worry about cookie at this stage because cookie we are going to handle separately. And the second header is going to be referred. So I'm just going to take these two. All right. So I need to keep it short. Otherwise, there will be one whole screen which is filled up with headers. Okay. So we are going to send the headers. Now we also need to send the cookies. So the cookie is here, right? So in the post, we are sending you the URL. We have specified the payload. We have specified the cookies, right? So now I think everything is set. So when this method executes, we are going to receive the response. Now using this response, we can now create a beautiful soup object, right? So response.text. So, and the parser that we are going to use is LXML. This is going to give us the soup object. Okay. Now, what's the objective? The objective is to get this particular value. So let's create a quick selector. So this is a very simple selector, I think, that can be used here. So this is TD. So I'm just going to take the last child of the TD. So I'll just take the last child, and that is going to be my select one. And this is the selector. All right. So this is going to return the element. And at the end of it, I'm simply going to return this element. From the element, I'm going to call actually get text method. This is the value that I'm going to return from this post page. So let's call this post page method here. So URL, CSRF, cookie, and a result. So this result is actually a little bit confusing. It should be CSRF token, but okay, I'll let it be like that. And this is the secret message, right? And this time we are going to print the data. Okay, let's have a quick recap. So first we are calling get CSRF cookie. So it is going to send the get request which the browser sends at the first step. We have CSRF middleware token which is being extracted, and it is going to return the CSRF token as well as cookies, right? So this is the first part. The second part is going to call the solve method. And what this solve method is doing, it is simply going to call the ReCaptcha method, because we are working with ReCaptcha. We are sending the site key and the URL. Okay. And we are simply returning the code. Okay. Now let's come back here. Then we have post page method. So here we have the payload. Payload has a placeholder for CSRF middleware token. But I did not, okay, I completely forgot to populate this payload. So what we have to do is we have to call the format method. So this is the safest way as compared to string concatenation. So our CSRF token is here, and the captcha response is in result. This should be renamed. Bad name. So this is our payload headers. So we looked at the headers. We have content type and referrer. And cookie this is the cookie that we got from the first request, right? So we are creating response and everything looks good. What we can do here is probably we can print some messages that print which will give us some indication about what is happening. So received CSRF token, something like that. Then print CAPTCHA, and this is the result. So these are the three messages. So let's run this. So Python demo.py. So the CSRF token we have received. Now it has gone to solve the CAPTCHA. So this one is going to take time. So I'm going to pause the video and come back after a few seconds. So there we go, solve the CAPTCHA, and we got the response right here, right? So that's how they do it. And if you're curious about how to do this using Scrapy, try to do it yourself. It should be very easy. In case you are not able to do it, you just have a look at the code which I am attaching. All right. So that's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one.